Hi, in this video, we're going to do a supplemental on how we created the AOE burst effect that's centered around the player. So unlike a targeted AOE effect, this one basically just radiates from the player into the world. So I thought we'd put together this simple picture to help explain all the steps, and then we'll go into the editor and look at each and every one of them. So um, our self AOE effects, we have a base class called gameplay ability hero target self base. And in that logic, we allow for the camera mode to change, followed by a pre montage set of effects. In our example, we're going to be using that child class to override and actually play a gameplay cue, which shows the particle system. But at the same time, we're going to be applying the gameplay movement stopped to all actors within radius. This doesn't actually stop them, it slows them, even though this is what the tag is written as. The result is that they slow. This may be a bug in Lyra, and they may change this later, but as of now, it slows rather than stops. Then once that occurs, we delay for zero point 0.6 seconds to allow the particle effect to play out a little bit. Then we start our montage. We delay another zero point 0.4 seconds, and those are largely based on the visual effects for the pre-effects and the sort of wind up of the montage to hit the peak moment. And then we basically do an application of the effects with the potential to have a different effect for ourselves, different effect for enemies, different effect for friendlies, and then we trigger our cooldown. So the basic flow are those elements. The child of that is called burst. The only real thing we did in burst, other than defining the durations, montages, etc., is insert a visual effect, which is this particle system here that came from one of the marketplace assets. All right, so that's how it flows out. Let's go look at it in the editor first. So what we'll probably do is, well, let's take a look at the main flow just so you get a feel for that. Burst, go to the parent. That is not the parent. All right, in the parent, let's close, let's start a new graph. So the parent class, we've defined a variety of variables that are then exposed to children. So all the things that I just discussed, those are all exposed to the child class, so that when I do set up a child, I simply need to just enter all this information, and the logic will flow based on those settings. The start is pretty basic, right? We activate the ability, we check if we're locally controlled, we commit the ability, we set the camera mode, we trigger our pre-montage visuals, which is a function. And if I go into that function, you'll see we determine if we have a pre-montage effect to apply. If that is true, we can debug. So we have a green circle that represents the pre-visualization location. And then we simply do a sphere overlap actors, picking up any pawns that are of the Lyra character class. Created a gameplay effect target from that array, and then apply the effect to all characters inside the sphere. So the pre-montage, by default, if you have an effect, it will get applied. This effect, in our example, is slowing the enemies, but it could be as simple as like lighting them on fire, or doing some kind of visual effect so that they know they're in the zone. Anything that you want to think of, you basically do in the pre-montage. Then we wait the allotted time. When that is completed, we fire off our montage, which is just a simple play the montage. And the montage that we have in burst is this basic sort of push outward sort of spell type montage. Okay. From there, we wait a little bit longer. The actual wait duration is timed for us on when the arms hit the extension point. So what we're doing is we're waiting long enough for the arms to kind of be at that point there, which is 0.55 to 0.6. So at 0.6 is when we trigger our event. So we basically wait this long right here and then trigger our event because the rest of the montage is kind of relaxing. So that's why we use 0.6 here. And then we apply the effect to ourselves. We do a determination of teams. So we basically say, all right, if we're debugging, we'll draw the red circle. So you'll see a green circle, then a red circle when we go play it. We determine what team we're on. So we get ourselves and we get the team object and say, okay, that's my team, be it team 1, 2, 3, or 4. We clear out our arrays. We do our sphere overlap to get our actors. And then for each one, we determine whether or not they are a friend, they're on the same team, or they're an enemy, they're on a different team. We come out of that, we then apply our effects to our enemies, apply our effects to our friends, and then trigger our cooldown visualization on the screen. So that's kind of the whole flow. And the burst, again, sets all of the variables for all of those components. The only thing we did in the actual burst is we said, when you're in the pre-montage visual, go ahead and send this gameplay cue. Oops. Come on. So the character burst activation gameplay cue is sent, which is then received by gameplay cues, the burst gameplay cue, which gets activated on that same gameplay cue tag, which basically takes the actor's location, does a line trace down for the ground to try to find the point where the ground is around the actor. We do a bit of math and we spawn our Niagara system at that location. So we're attached to the actor, so it'll move with us, but it is running at ground level as opposed to the center of the actor. So that's all we did in the burst. That's the only difference in code from the base class. All right. So with that explanation, let's go in, as we always do. We've got a bunch of people to kill spawned. I'm going to go pick up my ability, which pretty soon I'm just going to have this standard sitting in the inventory because we already covered all this earlier. All right, I have the burst ability. And so if I just play it right here, you'll first see the green circle. Then the movement slow will be applied. Then you'll see the montage. You'll see, and then the effect is applied at the end. So basically that's it. That's how it visualizes. You see the green and the red. The green being the pre-effects, the red being the actual effects. And then if I move while this is happening, you'll see my character slow and then speed back up. In fact, let's slow down so you can see it. I'll probably slowed down a little too early. All right. You are probably not going to be able to see the slowdown effect. But as I trigger the ability, particle system is spawning. I'm moving. The blast occurs. And you can see the differences as I've moved from the starting location to the ending location. The difference between the green circle where we applied the slow move and the red circle where we applied the damage. This allows enemies to get away from the player. So if the player is moving in one direction, the enemy is moving in another direction, you're going to get more separation before the effect applies. And at the same time, that first particle system allows enemies to know that you're using that ability, and they know that by the time the montage reaches the full arm extension, that if they're still within the circle, they're going to get damaged. So it's it's a bit of an overview of the self-based burst AOE damage. Thanks for watching.